Sometimes you feel like something has to change. You are no longer satisfied with what you are doing and you realize it's time for a new challenge. Sometimes you stumble across something new and you are amazed at how it could hide from you for so long. Sometimes you just don't know what else to write in an intro. Hi, I'm Casey, and this is Tower of God. Tower of God represents a few interesting developments when it comes to storytelling, all in one promising product. It puts South Korea on the map of countries that I consider storytelling powerhouses like Japan. I certainly know South Korea as the cradle of modern day esports, but it's a blank spot in my mind when I try to pinpoint notable animes or stories in general that I enjoy. However, word of mouth about the hidden potential of Tower of God lead me to Webtoon, an online publishing portal for comics originating in South Korea. And boy, this site resembles a cracked chest full of treasures. I have already bookmarked a handful of entries I stumbled upon. Kubera and Anarasumanara are just two examples of many more that hooked me with interesting storytelling and unusual visuals. And then there's a strategic partnership between Webtoon and Crunchyroll, a well-known anime streaming service and part of Warner Media. Webtoon has accumulated a tremendous catalog of content over the last 16 years. They also claimed 55 million active users per month and a daily readership of 15 million in 2019. Combined with 2 million subscribers and 50 million registered users on Crunchyroll, we are talking about some serious reach and a lot of potential for great adaptations. So, all you need is a successful first entry in this partnership to get the hype train rolling. Let's have a look whether Tower of God left an impression positive enough to get the job done. The story revolves around Bam, an at first glance ordinary boy who lives in a dark place devoid of anything hopeful. One day, attracted by a shimmer of light, Bam piles up rubble and tries to escape his hopeless home. He successfully reaches the roof of his prison, but is unable to get any further. At this point he meets Rachel, his first and only friend. She spends time with Bam and tells him a story about a mysterious tower. Those who are chosen and try to climb it are faced with numerous life-threatening challenges. But if they survive, they will get their wishes fulfilled and will also be able to see the sky and the stars. This is Rachel's ultimate goal. And as fate would have it, a bright light takes her away and leaves Bam behind. But he, robbed of his only friend, follows her and goes on a journey to climb the tower. Bam's progress can feel artificial at times. Occasionally, he has to play literal children's games to determine who is worthy of going to the next floor. Other times, the challenges feel like tasks straight out of a video game. It is somewhat reminiscent of Sword Art Online. But in contrast to this fever dream of mediocrity, Tower of God tries hard to ascribe some deeper meaning to all the challenges and inconveniences Bam has to overcome. We are steadily spoon-fed little details that fall into place over time, providing an increasingly clearer impression of a delicate power balance between different factions inside the tower. The viewer is presented with a lot of foreshadowing in numerous occasions without being able to make sense of it all yet. I really like this narrative style. Siu, the author, clearly spent a lot of time thinking about general motives, goals and habits of characters, factions and the way the world inside the tower could function. This effort shows especially in some dialogues, where you can sense how both individuals are trying to deceive the other without you as viewer knowing exactly why. The result is that the world outside of those artificial tasks feels rich and dense, full of struggle for power and intrigue. Tower of God's character writing is exceptional in a weird way. The story includes a ton of memorable and distinct personalities with a wide range of motives and goals. Some of them are pretty clear-cut. They strive for honor, reputation, family prosperity, follow their duty, or just desire revenge. Anak and Raak are fitting examples of these types of characters. Raak especially shines as a hilarious comic relief who has plenty of crazy intelligent lines baked in his dialogue and is therefore great fun. However, the majority of characters aren't clearly outlined from the start. It took the whole first season to introduce us to the core cast and some fundamental rules inside the tower. I like that pacing a lot. It leaves the viewer with plenty of food for thought and keeps interactions interesting. I also love how most characters are still wildcards for us. We don't really know what they are aiming for, so we need to stay attentive of what they say and do. This is so much better than the typical introduction of new characters in most standard series. The lazy, and sadly most popular way, is introducing them, introducing their problem, solving their problem, and or find a way to attach them to the main hero in some kind of bonding development. Most of the time this process will happen throughout one dedicated arc or a dedicated episode, and is thereby limited in its scope and impact because this storytelling technique is basically self-contained. In Tower of God, character building is much more complex and subtle. Without getting too deep into spoilers, let me explain what I mean by looking a little closer at Endorsi. Her actions so far don't make a lot of sense in the bigger picture. On one hand, she is needlessly reckless and driven by some nebulous attraction to our protagonist Bam. On the other hand, she's a princess of Jahat and bound to some pretty strict rules, which seem to be at odds with her behavior. She's also casually teaming up with outcasts that may entail some harsh repercussions for her or her family. On the surface, her actions seem emotionally driven, little thought out, and sometimes borderline stupid. But it feels like there's so much more to her than meets the eye. More or less everyone does. Tower of God takes its time to let characters interact and their habits sink in, and I adore it for doing so. This is a tough one. Let's have a look at the positives first. I really dig the Japanese voice cast, especially Kenta Miyake as Raak and Akira Sekine lending her voice to Anak. It also made me smile hearing Hiroyuki Yoshino in another role, where he's giving me flashbacks to scumbag Saruta out of Paranoia Agent. Furthermore, Taichi Ichikawa as Bam should be mentioned too. In a vast ocean of voice acting talent, he is just a small fish in his first major voice acting role. And he's doing a good job. Props to that. Another positive is the inclusion of Kevin Penkin for the score. At this point, it may look like I have a weird obsession with him. But yeah, his songs are just remarkable. He blends synthi sounds with rap and pop beats to some marvelous pieces of cheerfulness and heart. The opening and ending songs performed by the K-pop group Stray Kids elevate the show as a whole and are a joy to hear. Let's discuss the negatives briefly. The visual presentation is pretty rough around the edges, even though the original work done by Siu shows a lot of promise. On one hand, his color palette is odd but enticing, most of the time in an interesting and alluring way. Thick outlines and hard contrasts make his character designs distinct, unique, and fresh. On the other hand, his drawings barely use any shadows, which leads to some pretty bland scenes at times. As a comic on Webtoon, this art style definitely has some merit. The anime adaptation emulates this visual style, but it doesn't really work for me. Backgrounds and character shots are lacking depth numerous times, and it simply looks cheap. It's also rather obvious how the adaptation seems to be running out of time in the later episodes, when complex, animation-heavy scenes got reduced in comparison to the original to lower the workload. That was really disappointing. Let's be clear, the anime adaptation feels uneven at times and the overall production quality declines noticeably throughout the season. It also cuts a lot of interesting dialogue, which makes the original so dense and fun to think about. The work of Siu is a slow burn with rich characters and lore that doesn't cease to capture my attention. As far as season 1 goes, the anime adaptation may be weak at times, but I can't say that it's boring or wasting my time. It's not a strong recommendation, but still, 4 out of 5. I like it. At the end of the day, this adaptation of Tower of God was the sole reason why I started reading on Webtoon, so it succeeded at what it was set out to do. The web series as a whole has potential to be a masterpiece. It depends on how the following seasons play out. I haven't read them yet, but I definitely will in the near future and share my impressions with you in another spoiler-light follow-up. Until then, I suggest you check out Tower of God for yourself. Its challenging, thought-provoking storyline should carry you through phases in which the visual presentation lacks some of the grandeur the base narrative would have deserved. A clear recommendation and also a 4 out of 5. Thanks for watching and until next time.
終わりと始まりの物語。